question's not going to go away. We're just probably not ready for it yet.
Goldman Sachs and its investors must wait. Public opinion is not ready yet. It's not until 2015 and the International Climate Change Conference in Paris that the world leaders finally declare a state of emergency.
If we act here, if we act now, if we place our own short-term interests behind the air that our young people will breathe and the food that they will eat and the water that they will drink and the hopes and dreams that sustain their lives, then we won't be too late for them.
In the developed world, for the last 100 years, we haven't had to think about our water or worry about our water. It's been essentially unlimited wherever we want it, whenever we want it. It's been really inexpensive. No one thinks about their water bill. They don't say, oh, take a shorter shower, the water's too expensive. I think that era is over. Climate change is going to have a huge impact on water availability around the world. The same amount of water is going to be available in the big picture, but we don't live in the big picture. We live in a specific place. We raise our food in a specific place. And so the movement of that water will have a dramatic impact on how cities manage their water and how we're able to grow food to feed everybody.
The climate emergency demands radical changes. Wall Street re-embarks on its mission. Citigroup, one of the largest US banks, publishes a report announcing the end of free water.
And we're wasting water on a gigantic scale in certain regions, like California, southern Spain. We are seeing scarcity of water of sometimes extreme degrees. I mean, we have had tankers filled with water sailing to Barcelona. There is no alternative to pricing water properly and making people realize that every time they take a sip of water, there is an opportunity cost, and they feel it in their wallet. How else are you going to get people to use less if you give it to them for free?
The dam has broken. The soft sounds of liberalism grow louder to celebrate the union of finance and water.
We are going to see asset markets selling water derivatives. Even the high-frequency traders, the hedge funds, would become interested. So no, everybody sees this as an opportunity that will come. The question is just when and who will push it first and hardest.
And what would be their motivation in coming?
Profits. While also, indirectly doing good for humanity. So it's the best of all possible worlds. What could be better?
It's very amoral to trade water.
Why would it be immoral to trade water?
Because water is life.
We pay for healthcare. Just because it's life doesn't mean it cannot be priced.
The last stage in the financialisation of water. The launch of a stock market index to bet on water prices by NASDAQ, a stock exchange specialising in technology. This is the first time that water has been reduced to an algorithm. man who came up with the equation works in central London. As a former trader in a Swiss bank, he launched the carbon markets, where industrialists trade rights to pollute in the form of credits, before he discovered water.
Water used to be free in the old world, but the world is changing. There's too much stress on the system, and the most important commodity on earth can't be free forever. If you wanted to put it into the greed scenario, if you don't control it and use it properly, what will theoretically happen is those with the cash will have it, and those without the cash won't have it.
Lance Coogan is the sort of man who looks to the future. In order to attract investors, he's joined forces with the top water expert in the United States.
And I'm gonna drive around and your dad's gonna...
You just pull around to the side, Mom, and we'll throw some hay on.
Scoot way back up there.
Look like the grain.
A cowboy living in Idaho, in the western United States. The only man who knows the secrets of a market that was, until now, reserved for experts and insiders. Clay Landry runs a company that has recorded every water transaction since the year 2000.
When I got the call, it was unusual. It was a little outside of our, our normal focus. I was intellectually curious. From our standpoint, it was relatively easy because we had the data.
These are all bulls.
Okay, we gotta go get them their dinner now.
Why? Because they like lots of food, just like you.
It isn't a reliable index. To be clear, you're not buying water, you're buying the price of water.
Stuff.
So you're not taking physical delivery of the water.
So it's only a bet on the future?
It is a bet. Yeah, it is a bet. We're just betting whether the price is going to be high or low 6 months from now.
Some might say that this is speculation on water price.
Is it a speculation? I think we all are managing on what we think the future is going to look like.
Who get to pet any of them?
You didn't get to pet any of them?
Water's free, nobody worry, we're all happy. That's going back into the dark ages. I was in the carbon market 2006 to 2012. People are talking to me like, what's this nonsense that you do? Now it's in the front page of the news. If what people are saying is coming, you better be on top of your water situation, or you're going to be without water. And what I'm doing is getting people's focus through financial instruments to see what is actually going on the ground. It changes the world of water.
As in Australia, both partners have gained the support of powerful local environmental organizations. 10 years after the financial crisis, the financiers seem to be winning the environmentalists over.
We're seeing more nonprofit organizations forming to participate in that market and begin looking at ways to acquire water in areas where it's needed for stream flow, either for fishery benefit, water quality benefit, or some other type of habitat protection. The environmental water trades make up about a quarter of the market.
Is it too late to stop a financial takeover bid on water?
wave is letting up in the Midwest and Northeast. Temperatures are rising to dangerous levels in the West. Excessive heat watches and warnings are posted tonight in parts of California. At the same time, nearly 40 large wildfires are burning across the West. They have burned about
California has built up its wealth through water. Here the reserves are in the north, whilst the cities and farms are in the south. In order to domesticate this resource, a huge canal had been built, transporting billions of gallons of water, climbing over the mountains, irrigating the fertile valleys before supplying the people of Los Angeles. The California Aqueduct is the essential artery that ensures the life and prosperity of 40 million people. But climate change threatens the Californian dream.
California doesn't charge farmers for water. If they drill a well and pump out of the ground, they can pump as much as they want, whenever they want. Not only is there no charge, no one even keeps track of how much water they use. And during the last drought, which was just a year and a half ago, some of the farmers in the Central Valley of California were pumping so hard that the ground was falling. The ground was collapsing by an inch a month.
Lots of water, not so much water. We're right down there. So today I'm declaring a drought emergency in the state of California.
Record droughts and disastrous wildfires too. California has been catapulted into the world of extreme weather phenomena.
Heavenly Father, please help us. Please help us to be safe.
In the middle of the last drought, California passed a really important law that's going to change water use in the state forever. It may change what gets grown in California. It may change who succeeds and who fails.
Under pressure from environmentalists, the governor is forced to vote in a new law called SGMA, which limits underground water extraction. From now on, Californian farmers and cities will be entitled to a specific water quota based on their consumption. A revolution in the land of the free.
SGMA, or the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, initially I think was viewed with fear and trepidation. I think people recognized that it was a necessary piece of legislation. Just like balancing your checkbook for your home, you can't live by writing checks for more money than you have. And so I think collectively the Valley has endorsed it and supports the idea of sustainability.
In Bakersfield, the local water agency has decided to create a stock exchange to allow farmers to buy and sell their quotas. 10 years after Australia, California is coming around to the concept of water markets.
And maybe you're July and you say, wow, based on this projection, I'm going to have a supply surplus. You may decide, I'm going to manage that. I'm going to go into the market and make that available and maybe generate some additional economic value.
So if it falls through afterwards, we hit confirm, and it falls through, they didn't pay or they didn't, it doesn't work out, how do we let you know again that I want to take my water back? You know what I mean?
You can't.
You can't.
Once you hit confirm, as far as the district is concerned, the transaction is complete. Okay. There's going to be some growing pains, and certainly it's not going to be perfect every time, but we're trying to structure something that seems straightforward. Some of the people, the wheels were beginning to turn, and they were thinking, can I turn this to my advantage? Is there a way for me to generate additional value? And I think just the word market invokes in people a sense of, is there an opportunity? Can I somehow be advantaged by participating? And that's by far the most common reaction that I have when people hear that, we're creating a market for water. I think they view it as an opportunity.
Contract with EDF.
Right.
And they're not a platform provider. Right. They don't have skin in the game in terms of your bottom line.
Here again, environmentalists are at the forefront, encouraging the establishment of these markets.
You know, we're here because we see it as an important tool for flexibility as folks are dealing with more and more scarcity under Sigma and you know, climate change in general. So we've been talking to Eric for some time. Since this is ground zero for groundwater overdraft, it would be great to actually experiment with how water trading could benefit this region.
You know, the valley here is definitely ground zero, but there's groups in Sonoma, there's groups in Eastern Tule, Madera, Fox Canyon. Everyone probably knows about Fox Canyon. Oh, sorry, my name's Christine Babbitt and I work with
you're Christine Babbitt.
Yeah,
Okay. I thought you were.
I'm Ann Hayden.
I'm very surprised that the pro-environment are pro-market.
I was too initially. I think, you know, after we had a chance to talk and understand what their interests were and recognize that we were very much aligned, these transactions have to be evaluated, not just from a financial standpoint, but we also have to take into account environmental impacts, water quality issues, all of the things that they're concerned about. And so it's good to have their input and their vision. And so that answers your first question. I mean, we don't know. Right now, we're just kind of trying to project into the future.
Would you have imagined that situation before?
No. This is, I think, taken many of us by surprise. 4 or 5 years ago, this would not have been possible.
Why?
Supply has been constrained by definition of sustainability, and so the market, I think, is necessary.
Will California become the new Australia? Will intensive agriculture monopolize this resource? And will small farmers disappear, sacrificed in the name of water profitability? Wall Street's new creed.
Study shows that this preventable disease accounts for 15% of all deaths of children under the age of 5.
As quickly as possible. We will push that project no matter what happens. Our production lines are operating at full capacity and our engineers
5 times more likely to receive early childhood education than the poor and illiterate.
There is a digital divide, and we hope that this will allow people who previously had no way of accessing material access to the
war. We frequently travel on those roads. The damage done.
True fight of our lives. The United Nations Secretary General has called for a ceasefire in countries locked down in a long-term conflict.
Take the worst possible material, uranium, grind it into dust comparable to flour, and make a hill out of it, and put it into a place where people live. That is a colossally bad idea.
She's blind.
So many people are sick here. This is a silent killer.
What does it make you feel?
It makes me feel like a murderer. We have created an enormous environmental disaster.
An investigation, South Africa, Toxic City, on Al Jazeera.
For many young adults, a coming of age brings greater responsibility. For this young man, the responsibility of 800 years of family tradition weighs heavy on his shoulders. The choice is his, but the decision must be made soon. Monk by Blood, part of the Viewfinder Asia series on Al Jazeera.
There is no channel that covers world news like we do. We revisit places, we stay. Al Jazeera really invests in that, and that's a privilege as a journalist.
Hello again, Adrian Finnegan here in Doha. The headlines on Al Jazeera. The UK has completed its split from the EU, leaving the single market and customs union at 11 p.m. London time on New Year's Eve. Prime Minister Boris Johnson said the country would make the most of what he called its new freedom.
This is an amazing moment for this country. We have our freedom in our hands, and it is up to us to make the most of it. And I think it will be the overwhelming instinct of the people of this country to come together as one united kingdom, England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, working together to express our values around the world, leading both the G7 and the COP26 Climate Change Summit in Glasgow.
Al Jazeera's Natasha Butler reports now from the border crossing at Calais.
We have seen the first trucks arrive from the UK to the European Union via France and Calais here, this gateway now to the EU. They arrive first via the Channel Tunnel, which links the UK to France. And behind me, in fact, that was the first ferry that pulled in a short while ago carrying cargo trucks. And now for customs officials here, it really has been an opportunity to put into place what they have been practicing now for several years, an opportunity to put into place their so-called smart border.
The UK could bring emergency hospitals into use as a more infectious strain of coronavirus puts pressure on the health system there. Many hospitals are now dealing with more patients than they were at the peak of the outbreak in April. 3/4 of England is in the highest tier of lockdown. Medics in Brazil have held a minute's silence to mark the new year. Staff at the intensive care unit in Sao Paulo were among those paying tribute to colleagues and patients affected by COVID-19. Cases continue to surge there. The country has recorded more than 1,000 deaths for the third day in a row. And despite the difficulties of 2020, many people have managed to celebrate the new year, but of course on a much smaller scale. In New York's Times Square, only a few invited guests were allowed, including healthcare workers. Those are the headlines. Now let's get you back to Lords of Water.
Will California become the new Australia? Will intensive agriculture monopolize this resource? And will small farmers disappear, sacrificed in the name of water profitability? Wall Street's new creed.
People have been fighting over water since white people set foot in this valley. It's our life. If we don't have water, we don't have an economy, and we don't have anything. You have the growers, you have the packers, you have the shippers, you have the manufacturers, but it's all based on what comes up out of the ground, and you need water for that.
Historically, the Central Valley has been the orchard that supplies the whole country with fruits and vegetables. Considered of national security, it ensures food independence for the United States. But over the past decade, the crops have changed. Salad leaves have disappeared, and the valley has become an almond-producing machine. As in Australia, the financialisation of water is transforming landscapes and encouraging monoculture.
I can remember, because I grew up in the valley, driving up and down and all over the place, that you had much smaller plots of land and farms and a lot more alfalfa and cotton, especially cotton. And now you have, just as far as the eye can see in some areas, almond trees. As the price of water increases and it becomes more valuable than the land and more valuable than the production of the land, well, you have a commodity, it's valuable somewhere. If you can't use it on the land, what else might you be able to do with it? Farm it to sell.
So in a way, water is a new crop.
Yes, water is probably the most valuable crop in the Central Valley right now. It's more valuable than oil.
So what if blue gold, were to replace black gold. John Vidovich is what's known as a water baron, a reference to the billionaires of yesterday who controlled the oil markets.
I knew where LA was, I knew where San Francisco was. This Central Valley is something that was foreign to me. And after I bought the land, it was about 4,000 acres, I bought it for $270,000, and it had today's value. It had about $12 million worth of water rights in today's value, maybe more. And
a lot of people feel that John Vidovich, he's not a farmer, that he is a water farmer, that he buys these lands and gets himself involved in this stuff in order to get control of the groundwater.
My strategy has always been that it's not so much the land, but it's the water. And maybe I was a little bit early, maybe I wasn't.
How much have you invested in all these infrastructures?
I will say in the hundreds of millions. So that's what I have invested.
Hundreds of millions of dollars?
Yes, sir.
Does it worth it?
Yes, absolutely.
John Vidovich is not afraid of soaring water prices, nor the arrival of Wall Street investors. For him, the danger lies elsewhere.
Cities will always get water. The politics are there, the money is there. They can increase the cost of water so that the farmers can't pay for it. They're going to steal it by making it so expensive that the farmer is at their mercy.
The fear is it's all going to go to LA because LA has all the money. That's the fear. Remember MWD, the Metropolitan Water District, which is the big gorilla down south, they have millions of customers where you could spread the cost out and it's not going to affect the individual customer. Water is money. It's power and it's money, and it's becoming more and more and more valuable almost daily.
In the land of free enterprise, water competition is fierce. City against countryside, ecologists against farmers. Some people are already preparing to become water bankers, welcoming those who wish to stock their reserves before using or reselling them according to market prices.
Semi-Trop is really set up as a sponge to be able to capture as much water available when it's here. And then we have the luxury, when the surface water is not available, we can fall back upon the stored water in the groundwater basin. Semi-Tropic owns these canals. We paid for the canals, we maintain the canals, we built the canals. So if a landowner wants to actually have access to my canal to move a water supply they acquired, they're going to pay for it.
As a seller, it's more interesting to sell water to cities than to farmers?
Yeah, you probably have a higher ability to sell water to cities. But then again, where are those cities getting their food supply? Are they importing the food supply from outside the state, outside the country, or do they want to have a local food supply? They like having the natural stream system near their home. Where's the value? Is it fish? Is it farms? Is it people? That really, at the end of the day, is the hard issue for us to decide about where's the best use for water supply, and it varies based upon where you are.
The 20th century economy centered around the oil trade. Nowadays, water looks set to shape the 21st century.
We have seen financial investors and others come in and look at ways to, take advantage of that. Their goal is to get in before the market elevates the price of water. And in some cases, I've heard that they've done it.
And how do you look at that?
There's some that feel that that's kind of exploiting the system, but there's nothing that we can do to prevent it. May not like it, but that's the way our system, that's what capitalism is set up to accommodate.
Have you met them personally?
No.
Does it make sense? Should we be trading water? I think we're past that question. We are trading water in this country, and more people are moving to the West. And they need water.
We are just at the beginning of this water revolution, the water financial revolution.
You can't let the market be the only decider of how water's allocated. Price can't be the only way you distribute water, because then you'll have rich people with big swimming pools and poor people who are dead.
Allt mer tryckande grepp, och SMHI går nu ut och höjer varningen för varma temperaturer från klass 1 till klass 2. Och det här är alltså den näst högsta varningsklassen. Och det innebär att det råder extrem värme. Varningen den gäller för de flesta kommuner i Stockholms län och flera...
The global water rush is accelerating. Privatization, competition, profit. Key words of the liberal doctrine. Faced with this threat, one woman is standing up, Maud Barlow, a Canadian human rights activist. She has already won her first victory at the United Nations in 2010, when the General Assembly voted in favor of a resolution that recognized access to water as a universal right.
It must be declared a public resource that belongs equally to
I was in the United Nations up in the balcony the day that they voted, and I thought we were going to lose. I had staff with me. They were crying. I said, don't worry. We're going to be back in 2 years or 5 years, no matter how long it takes. We're going to be back and we'll do it. And when they vote, they sit in their chairs and they vote electronically, so you know right away. So boom, 122 countries voted in favor, and 41, they abstained. They didn't have the nerve to oppose, even though they actually wanted to oppose.
Among the nations that abstained that day were Australia, the United States, and Great Britain. Countries that have all chosen to turn water into a financial product.
The human family took an evolutionary step forward at that point. And since then, every country has ratified. It's in one way or another, it's now universal.
So you got it now.
You got it now.
Maud Barlow may have won the battle, but she hasn't yet won the war. In Stockholm in December 2018, the activist was invited by the Nobel Committee to continue her fight at a conference about the future of water.
So we thought we'd focus on activism for a while. And to start us off, I'd like to ask Maud Barlow to give us a talk, please.
The United Nations calls water scarcity the scourge of the earth. To truly guarantee the human right to water, we must protect it as a public trust and a commons, not a commodity to be put on the open market for sale like oil and gas. And we must challenge the current power structures and institutions that support unequal access to the planet's dwindling water supplies. Our goal must be clean, affordable, accessible, public water for all, for everywhere, for all time.
Is it the end of cheap and free water?
Well, the corporations and Citigroup and others want it to be the end of free and cheap water. That's their argument. They're saying, oh yes, it's a human right, because they can't fight that anymore because everybody says you're an awful person if you deny it, right? So, oh yes, it's a human right, but the end of free and cheap water. When they say it's got to be a commodity, it's because they know that the scarcer it becomes in a world where you desperately need water, there's gold. It's gold. It's blue gold.
In Stockholm, Maud Barlow appears as the grain of sand capable of bringing the water market machinery to a halt.
There are an awful lot of people in elite circles, and let's face it, the Nobel's pretty elite, that believe that the best thing to do for the water crisis is commodify it, put it on the open market like oil and gas, and see where it goes from there, right? So for me, it represented a breakthrough in getting our message out that we have to see water as a human right, as a public trust, and something that belongs to everyone. That's our goal. It's a big goal, and not one everyone shares, I have to tell you.
Thank you so much for coming. Really, really, it was wonderful. Be activists now. Just go out and sometimes it'll be hard because sometimes you'll find nobody else. It's like, why me? Why don't other people care? And it's just the way it is. And you guys will do it. I know you will. You'll be our leaders.
The winds of revolt are strengthening. In Europe, the fight against the financialisation of water is fuelled by the refusal to accept any sort of privatisation. And in the streets of Dublin, Rome, Berlin and Paris, citizens are spearheading the resistance.
Une vague de chaleur sur toute la France aujourd'hui, jusqu'à 42 à Paris, record battu.
Il fait vraiment très chaud et ce la nuit, difficile de faire baisser la température des
In the French capital, politicians have also taken up the fight. In 2009, the city council ousted Veolia and Suez, the two giants who shared the water market, and created its own water management company, Eau de Paris.
Honnêtement, quand j'ai porté la bataille de la gestion publique de l'eau à Paris, mais quand je dis personne, personne ne pensait que j'allais réussir. Voilà. Et quand je dis personne, c'est vraiment personne. Pour avoir vu de l'intérieur, pendant près de 14 ans, le service de l'eau parisien, je suis assez formelle sur le fait que si on veut exploiter la ressource selon les intérêts du concitoyen consommateur, selon les intérêts de la ressource sur le long terme, préservation, qualité, c'est incompatible avec une logique privée. Parce que la logique du privé, c'est une logique qui sera de rentabilité de court terme. Avant, il y avait quand même au moins un peu une logique industrielle. Maintenant, il y a une logique industrielle, mais qui s'efface de plus en plus devant une logique financière. Vraiment financière. Et la logique financière obéit à du court terme, voire à du très court terme. L'eau est encore du domaine, on va dire, de l'environnement, mais on voit bien que les acteurs économiques font pression à différents niveaux, les grands acteurs privés, pour que l'eau devienne une ressource économique comme une autre. Le risque est à la fois plus grand et en même temps, il y a une mobilisation plus forte du public. Donc c'est ça qui est intéressant, c'est que je pense qu'il n'y a jamais eu autant de mobilisation autour de l'eau.
How long will the European fortress be able to withstand the financial market pressure? In 2012, a petition called Right to Water amassed nearly 2 million signatures, a first for Europe. Protesters demanded that water be given special status.
The European Citizens Initiative really changed the way we discuss about water in Europe. It helped creating a movement and a whole idea that water should be considered as a human right. Before, all the documents from the European Commission were starting to introduce market mechanisms. They were always pushing for liberalization. Now, this is not something that you can easily do in a public way. So the official answer from the European Commission was, of course, we support the human right to water, but nothing happened, no, in legislation. What is the problem to recognize the human right to water? I mean, it's a right recognized by the EU. It's something that is essential for life. The only problem is business and profit.
The Right to Water petition has so far halted the ambitions of financiers around Europe. But it remains a fragile victory.
There are two paths, and I don't know who's going to win this. It's either water is a commodity and it's going to be put on the open market for sale, or it's not. It's going to be understood to be a human right. You can't have it both ways. It's time to choose now which path.
A word on hope from each of you, please. Well, for me, the hope is the right.
I totally get the morality, but the world's a different place, and it's changing. And it's changing fast.
Ne pas comprendre que cette matière résonne avec l'ensemble de notre culture, même de nos civilisations. Se joue là un enjeu qui dépasse même public, privé. C'est l'avenir des conditions de vie pour l'ensemble des citoyens de ce monde.
Water scarcity and climate change, is it a windfall for our business? Yes, it is. Is that a bad thing? Well, I suppose time will tell.
I'd be saying don't do it. Don't take on this model. People just trying to make huge amount of money out of it. You're more going to have to sell your soul to get the water to be able to survive.
Today, the fate of water is still undecided. Originally, over 4 billion years ago, water arrived on this Earth from space and has since survived all manner of catastrophes. But it is now being threatened by the men who dream of turning rivers into gold. As if nature was nothing but a giant supermarket.
It's time for the perfect journey. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
The summer gales are blowing through southern Chile. Not a big surprise, really, but for most of Chile and Argentina, it's looking fine. There are more showers growing up in the northwest. They might become substantial on Saturday. But if you're in Rio, you've sort of lost summer for a few days. This stuck trough means the forecast looks like this. 3 days of thunderstorms seem likely, with the temperature dipping accordingly. There's a bit of rain further west in Brazil, but generally speaking, Bolivia and Peru aren't quite as wet as they were. The strong trade winds mean frequent showers, and the windy weather for the lesser and the greater Antilles. The cloud banking up against Nicaragua, and then coming out of the US, the latest cold push has given snow in central Mexico on the higher ground, and will probably pick up or produce some big thunderstorms in the south, I think later on Saturday, maybe even to Sunday. And the system at the moment has curved itself into a proper depression just on the eastern side of Texas. In West Texas, snow fell, 30 centimetres of snow. And this system will keep moving northeastwards. So the snow is up here over Kansas, for example. The rain, possibly nasty stuff running up through Atlanta. The whole lot keeps going in that general northeasterly direction, which means Dallas, having had a poor start to the year, will improve nicely.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Across Europe, immigration is high on the agenda.